What's up guys, UrAvgWarGamer is back with another video of World of Warships, and today I'm going to be featuring a solid tier list for all the super ships that are currently in the game, and I will explain all the super ships, even carriers, one by one in this video. So keep watching it, and I want to explain absolutely every strength and weaknesses that is related to each super ship, so you can able to get that analysis, and you will able to basically pick a certain ship that is up to your taste. So that is pretty good for you. And obviously this is my personal rating, so it could differ a lot by from other YouTubers or streamers, so keep that in mind as well. But since I have been playing for almost 6-7 years, I have a really good idea about the game mechanics and the ships itself, because I have almost all of them, basically except for the Maine, which is a recent auction battleship, American. Except that I have all of those ships, so you will actually going to get a lot of value from this video. So if you do like my content, again, subscribe. So let's talk about this tier list itself. And the first ship that we have is going to be Annapolis, the tier 10 heavy cruiser, which is a American Des Moines successor. So like Annapolis, is it really worth it? Well, in my opinion, in this tier list, which you can see from S to C, because honestly there are not a whole lot of really weak super ships, so I would rate Annapolis to be a S tier. Ridiculously strong, this cruiser. And honestly, I don't know why they have given this button, which I will talk about it. I mean, it's an F button, as we all know. It's an infamous button that Wargaming has added into the super ships, and Annapolis basically gets that, which basically makes it already insane, even more insane. So Annapolis comes up with 12 guns. I mean, compared to Des Moines, which is a tier 10 heavy cruiser, it has extra gun, which basically makes it 12. As you can see here, we have 12 guns, 2 on the front, 2 on the back, and then we have the same reload time, like 5.5 seconds. So the DPM of the Annapolis gets actually buffed superbly high. Like extra turret, it just gets a flat out buff, which is crazy. The fire range is slightly increased, if I'm not wrong, but its anti-air defense is absolutely crazy. It is super strong. If you build that Annapolis with AA build in your mind, it can absolutely shred planes with defensive AFR. I can tell you that if you hate carriers, Annapolis is definitely a big, great pick. Honestly, it's super strong. And not only that, it also have very good offensive capabilities. Like, look at that reload time of 12 guns. Really strong AG with 14% fire chance and really good AP. I mean, AP has, AP angles, and you can actually smash cruiser at close ranges if they are not angled enough, which in the case of Annapolis, it's really good to hit them with citadels. It's super easy. Also, it has decent concealment, and also it does have a slightly higher HP pool of 56,000 compared to Des Moines, like 49-ish, 50,000. So that is some difference compared to Des Moines. So in my opinion, Annapolis is absolutely amazing. I think it does have so much firepower in its arsenal that it can just farm battleships. And on top of that, they have given a F button, a burst fire mode, which basically shoots 3 salvos in like 3 or 4 seconds, which is kind of crazy. In just 4 seconds, if you launch 3 salvos, imagine if it's not impossible to, not get a fire. Like, it is absolutely perfectly, possible that you will going to get some fire damage. I mean, you will set fires eventually, which is really good. So Annapolis, in my opinion, with this all characteristics in mind, it is ridiculously crazy. I mean, its armor is also very good. If I can show you here, it has a spaced armor compared to Des Moines, which basically makes it this armor scheme is straight out is crazy compared to Des Moines. You will have a less chance of getting citadel compared to Des Moines in every way possible. I can tell you that for sure. So overall, I mean, it does have only, give me a second. It does have 30mm deck armor, just like Des Moines, but armor scheme in terms of citadel protection is significantly better, in my opinion. So that is the perfect thing of the Annapolis, and I really loved it. It is an amazing cruiser, absolutely worth it to buy. So there's exactly that. In my opinion, Annapolis is okay. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be a Clausewitz, which is a super tier Hindenburg. And I mean, it's a successor to Hindenburg, and it's a German heavy cruiser, which is a super ship. So in my opinion, I think I will rate Clausewitz at B plus tier. It is definitely a letdown compared to like Annapolis and Conde, and I will explain Conde later, but Clausewitz seems to be not that interesting in my opinion, and it does not bring anything that is like very special. Like Annapolis has F button, but Clausewitz actually does not have F button. And let me show you that in port. It does have 12 guns, as you can see. It's a super ship. It does have slightly improved caliber, like 210 compared to like 203 on Hindenburg. Slightly better HP, but slightly better anti-defense, which is good. Torpedoes are almost the same, if I'm not wrong. Maybe it gotten slightly better. Yeah, it has extra torpedo actually. I mean, it does have some extra torpedoes. 4 into 5 is 20. In the case of Hindenburg, I think it's 4 into 4. So slightly more torpedoes, but again, they are having less range. I wish they would have improved the range to 10 kilometers like they did on the Edgar, but in the case of Clausewitz, they didn't done that, which is pretty unfortunate. And on top of that, I mean, it does not have F button, and that is the most unfortunate thing. I mean, it does have spotter and hydro, but again, it does not give me anything like special. Like if we talk about the guns have basically the same, you know, apart from the HE alpha damage, the AP is basically the same, and HE alpha damage is slightly better, and that's basically it, which kind of gives Clausewitz a slightly better DPM over Hindenburg, which I will show you really fast. Like, let me show you that real quick. So this is Clausewitz. Its AP DPM is going to be 425. The Hindenburg has slightly, actually better. I didn't realize it. It has actually better AP DPM than Clausewitz, but HE DPM on Clausewitz is slightly better than Hindenburg. And that seems to be kind of baffling, that for a super ship, it does not have that much of a upgrade in terms of firepower. And that kind of sucks. And that's the reason why I rate Clausewitz that much. There's one thing that is good about the Clausewitz is that its armor. Now its armor is slightly better than Hindenburg, and as you can see here, it has 50mm deck armor, which is pretty good against tanking like battleship shells. Like battleships cannot overmatch this armor compared to Hindenburg. But honestly, who needs this armor if you have such a gigantic superstructure, which you can clearly see, so much superstructure, all 16mm. Basically means that you're going to get penetrated from the superstructure and from the bow as well. Like bow is also not improved, it's only 27mm. So not the 380, but 406mm caliber or above can still overmatch it. So there's nothing really special about the armor either. Slightly better tech armor doesn't really help to see a lot, like Hindenburg getting buffed, the Clausewitz getting buffed. So it's pretty weird, in my opinion. It has slightly better characteristics, but not having F button, or we call it the funny button, it just does not make up for it. So I think it's not really a good investment, although it's really, really strong. I mean, super ships are pretty good, and Clausewitz is no exception, but still, I don't really rate it that much. So Clausewitz, in my opinion, B plus tier. It's pretty good, still is pretty good. Okay, so the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Conde, which is a French heavy cruiser that is a successor to Henry IV. And how do I rate that ship? Well, in my opinion, Conde seems to be going like up there. It is ridiculously broken. These two ships, Annapolis and Conde, are probably the most powerful ships that Wargaming has added like in the game. They are super strong, and just because of one reason. And like Conde also have access to the same kind of bullshit thing, to be honest, and let me show you that. And as you can see here, Conde, this is Conde, and it gets a burst fire mode, a bit different compared to Annapolis, and I will explain. Like it has a F button, which it does not give 3 salvos compared to Annapolis, but it has 2 salvos, but having better dispersion, which actually gets closer to like destroyer levels of dispersion in this burst fire mode, which is absolutely crazy. 2 salvos within 1 second, almost like slightly more than 1 second. You shoot 2 salvos with AP. If you shoot on a cruiser, you will almost always going to dev strike that ship. There is no way he can able to tank that in a broadside. And Conde, with this very fast shell velocity, is just going to smash that particular ship. And that's the reason why Conde is absolutely crazy. I mean, Annapolis, if you use Halsey, gets broken, like it's already broken, even more broken. If you use Filippo Bonio, which actually gets the talent of getting value from devastating strikes, because let me show you, like this legendary captain, if you put it on Conde, this is a bit of an extra thing that I'm explaining, but it will give you a lot of value if you try to use it on Conde. Sorry. So what Conde does is not only that it gets the extra speed boost when like tanking 2 million potential damage, you also going to get this rampant, which basically activates upon earning the devastating strike achievement, which is crazy. You get even better reload time on top of these 12 guns, which already having a ridiculously good reload time of 12 seconds. With the fire chance, 22%, you are going to eat battleships with fires alive. Fires, upon fires, if any battleship pushes Conde, he's going to die within just a couple of minutes. It's not going to be even funny if you watch when Conde tries to farm a battleship. It is ridiculous. It does have torpedoes, slightly more torpedoes than Henry, if I'm not wrong. Even though they are 9 kilometer, slightly better anti-defense, but anti-defense is kind of a, not that much of a big deal, at least in Conde. It's an okay AA defense. I mean, it's good against a bit of a planes on tier 10s, but carriers will strike you. Unfortunately, you can't do much. But there's a very good concealment of 13 kilometer, and this concealment, 13.0 kilometer, combined with the fact that you have this F button, you can basically go undetected, and if there's a cruiser broadsiding around 15 kilometers, you're going to smash them. Slightly better HP pool as well, just like all the normal super ships, but this all thing combined with amazing speed boost, heal, and also on top of all of that, it also have main battery reload booster that you found on Henry. Like, it is crazy. I don't know what you really want more than this whole package. It is absolutely ridiculous. So Conde, you can close your eyes off and you can just buy Conde and you will just absolutely love it. It's an amazing ship and it's definitely pretty brokenly overpowered. So let's go and get to the other ships as well. So now we have the ship which is if I'm not wrong, it's a Holland super ship, which is Dalarna. So Dalarna, a pan-European destroyer that I would rate as a B+. So similar to Clausewitz, Dalarna again doesn't come up with anything special. Give me a second. So let me show the Dalarna real quick in the port. So this is Dalarna. And Dalarna actually doesn't have anything that gives it a very special ability because, well, it has extra gun, but again, they have nerfed the reload time for, compensating with extra gun. So it does not have that much of an improved DPM compared to Holland, which is unfortunate. It does have torpedoes, which are 10 of them, so not increased in torpedoes. And it also have Holland torpedoes. But it has access to these special torpedoes, which we call it alternate torpedo. So you basically can switch from Holland torpedoes that are 90 knots to basically these torpedoes that are basically having 74 knot speed. So they deal a lot of damage, that's for sure. I mean, this is not that you found on Holland anyway, but you're still going to get a lot of value since the alpha damage is pretty high. So Dalarna at least has that. The main battery firing range is also very much of a letdown compared to Holland. It's slightly better, so I don't think so it's going to be really that good. But at least there's one thing apart from alternative torpedo, which I explained. It does have really, really strong anti-defense. Like Holland, it's slightly better. It's not like crazy better, but slightly better. But it's still, like, Holland is already very strong against aircraft carriers. Dalarna is even ridiculous against aircraft carriers. So you're definitely going to have a good time shooting down planes, especially if you know that you time your entire off and on strategically, and it will help a lot. I mean, maneuverability wise, it's slightly weird. I'm not a fan of this turning circle, 720 meters. It's almost getting to the levels of light cruisers, so yeah, bad turning circle to be honest. So yeah, and the concealment is also not really good either. I think it's slightly worse than Holland, 6.1 if I'm not wrong. So overall, except for this alternative torpedo and slightly better DPM, which I will show you real quick so that you can understand. So this is, oh, I didn't add the, okay, let me show you here, wait. Holland, and then you have Dalarna. I didn't add that, unfortunately. So Holland has basically 210 HEDPM and Dalarna has 225 HEDPM. So it's slightly better, like it's maybe 10% better compared to, like even not that 10% better, if I'm not wrong. So nothing too special in my opinion. And that's the reason why I just don't like Dalarna much. I mean, it's not really good an upgrade compared to, like, for example, Des Moines to Annapolis, Henry Ford to Conde. They are ridiculously strong, but yeah, for spending so much credits on a super ship and then you just having a really high service cost, it's just like it just doesn't justify the cost and the services that you will spend on Dalarna. So in my opinion, it's going to be B+. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Devastation, the tier 11 super conqueror, or I mean you can call it a battleship that is a super tier. So Devastation in my opinion is also going to be a B+ tier, which is, I would say, a strong ship, but it's still, like compared to a lot of other battleships, nothing too special. Unfortunately, Devastation is that case. So let me explain why I would rate Devastation to be only B+, and let me show you Devastation real quick. So this is the British battleship, which actually has 16 guns, so definitely a big upgrade, or looks like to be a big upgrade compared to Conqueror, 12 guns. Still have 419mm guns, so no change in caliber whatsoever. A lot much better heat pool points of 99,000, and you know that infamous super heal that Conqueror has, Devastation does have as well. But the problem with the Devastation, in my opinion, is that I mean, these guns, even though they have like 16 guns, the reload time of these guns are actually pretty bad, of 38 seconds base. Compared to Conqueror's only 30 seconds. So the damage per minute or output is actually not that much of a different compared to Conqueror. Maybe slightly better. Maybe if I can show you in the chart, which is a ship tool ST, and you will be able to find out. So this is Devastation. HEDPM is 181,000 and Conqueror it's 172,000. And unfortunately, Devastation, with even though having 16 guns, doesn't have improved accuracy, which basically Sigma determines. So worse Sigma than Conqueror. The HEDPM is also slightly better, like almost like 3-4% better. I don't like say that it is like a lot good. So with these things in mind, Devastation only value that you can get is going to be the slightly better HP and armor. Like this is a bit more tanky armor belt, which basically helps to protect the citadel. As you can see, it's 432mm, and Conqueror has slightly less armor, and I mean slightly less HP. So at least Devastation in that regard is pretty good, but slightly better A as well. And in maneuverability wise, it's definitely very gigantic, having like a slightly better speed, but gigantic turning circle. And concealment is also, I think, slightly worse if I'm not wrong, or maybe the same. I don't exactly remember, but the concealment of the Devastation is not that bad. But still, these all factors combined make Devastation not really that interesting, especially it does not have any sort of funny button. And that's the same case with the Clausewitz. Clausewitz also doesn't have F button. Devastation also doesn't have any F button, which basically compensates for its bad reload time on the guns. Even though the HE is really good, as you can see, 7,200, the same thing, 48% fire chance. And I mean, you are shooting a very high, damaging salvo compared to Conqueror. Still, in my opinion, Devastation doesn't feel like special, except for the healing power that Devastation has. I mean, it is crazy in terms of healing potential because of slightly more HP pool. Like, it's almost like 16, 17,000 more if I'm not wrong, which is pretty good. So you have a lot much more potential to heal, and you do have super heals, as I said, you have in like these sort of heals in Conqueror. So Devastation is exactly that. So if you like 16 guns, sure, Devastation is good, but there are better options, and that's why I would rate Devastation to be only B+. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Eagle, a super carrier. And Super Carrier Eagle is basically a tier 11 Audacious, or basically a successor to Audacious. So in my opinion, like, it's a carrier, right? And we all know that where carrier actually belongs nowadays in the game. And it is definitely true, to be honest. I'm not joking. But the Eagle actually goes straight up to S tier. It is really strong. Honestly, I mean, with the introduction of tactical squadrons, like Eagle has, which I will show you here real quick. So it does have access to tactical squadrons, which are basically insane in terms of speed. I mean, you are basically reaching around like 372 knots with like HE rockets. And then you have 342 knots of speed with torpedo bombers. And then you have, on top of that, bombers, which are even more insane. So with this all factor combined, you're having these planes that are pretty insane. Sorry guys. So with that like in mind, like Eagle is basically a better, like way better Audacious. You have torpedo bombers and bombers that are basically similar to Audacious, but again, once you are playing super carriers, they have slightly better HP compared to like you know, the Audacious because of the commander. If you use the commander here, this actually have like this skill basically slightly not this skill. Once you use survivability expert, it basically have this improved because of its tier. So Eagle have slightly better HP pool on these planes, and not only that, they are also tanky as well, like 2600, 2800. They have a lot of HP on their planes, so they are not easy to shoot down. And on top of that, they have very good alpha damage. And with all these things like bombers, 52mm armor pen, when you throw 18 of these bombs on a Kurfürst, because well, Kurfürst has 50mm deck armor. If I can show you the Hannover, you're basically going to pen like whole of this armor with these Eagle bombs, tactical bombs. So with that much insane speed, you could basically do a lot of damage to a lot of ships. It's ridiculously strong. The attack aircraft HE rockets have so many rockets, 60 rockets in payload, and that basically tells you a lot. And then you have 4 torpedo bombers having 7,800 damage each. So with a very good deck armor of 1 or 2mm. I mean, it's small, but still it's good against battleships. So with this all stuff in mind, Eagle is ridiculously strong. Honestly, it is pretty much broken. And I mean, all the stuff that I talked about. Oh, by the way, there's also one thing. Eagle also have slightly better concealment compared to the United States and Sekiryu, which I will explain later. So all of these factors combined with Andrew Cunningham, which basically increases their speed even more once you get 4 torpedo floods, well, Eagle gets easily to the super S tier in my opinion. It is pretty strong. You should buy it. The Annapolis, Conde, and the Eagle are probably the most top picks that I will absolutely recommend. So there's exactly that. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Edgar. It's a Minotaur tier 11, or you can call it a super ship, which is obviously Edgar, and I will rate this ship to be A tier. In my opinion, well, it's slightly, you know, in terms of its firepower and capability, not like the Annapolis and Conde, but it is definitely better than Clausewitz and a couple of other cruisers that I will explain. So Edgar is definitely an A tier, which is very strong in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. Edgar is definitely very powerful, and I will explain the reason why I would rate Edgar to be A. So first of all, let me show you that in the port, Edgar is a bit longer ship compared to Minotaur in my opinion. And right now, as you can see the armor layout, it has definitely a bit better armor compared to Minotaur. I mean, it's still going to get Citadel, to be honest. I mean, it's super big Citadel armor regardless, but still, I find Edgar to be getting less Citadel for some reason compared to Minotaur, and I felt that a lot, okay? Minotaur does also have access to slightly better HP, which basically atypical on like tier 11 cruisers. And then you have the 6 guns, or like which is pretty good, having like crazy good AP DPM. I will explain that in a chart. And then you have torpedoes, which are actually buffed compared to Minotaur, which is I personally really like that Edgar have access to 12km torpedoes, and that's definitely a big of an upgrade compared to Minotaur, because 10km seems to be like not that enough range at tier like 10 and super tier, and basically Edgar kind of fixes that gap, and like by having this 12km torpedoes, which is pretty nice. And if I can show you the AP characteristics real quick, because it is slightly different compared to Minotaur. The good thing about the Minotaur and Edgar is that Edgar has slightly better AP DPM. Minotaur, again, having really good AP DPM, but still, I really like that they have buffed the Edgar DPM quite a bit. Definitely buffed it pretty nicely out there. And there's also one thing that I want to explain about the AP shell characteristics itself, and that is, if you look at the Minotaur, it has a arming threshold of 12 millimeter, which basically means that you can actually penetrate destroyers. Edgar, on the other hand, doesn't have access to reduced arming threshold, but it does have improved ricochet angles and good short fuse time, which is pretty good. But the problem with the Edgar here is that if you have this arming threshold, you will not going to penetrate destroyers all the time. You will get a lot of overpens, and you will go and check out that pretty much in any Edgar game, if you have a radar Edgar, I mean it's a Minotaur, right? So it does have access to smoke and radar. So if you radar a DD broadside, you will get a lot of overpens, which is actually kind of a bummer, but still, I really enjoyed Edgar. Better torpedoes, really strong anti-defense. Again, if you hate carriers, this anti-defense will actually going to calm your nerves. It's pretty good. The maneuverability is also, I think, slightly better than Minotaur. I mean, I'm not going to talk about maneuverability. It's definitely almost similar to Minotaur characteristics. The concealment is slightly worse, but still you have a radar which is 10 kilometers. So you can still stealth radar destroyers. So I mean, if anything spots you at 9.5, it will absolutely going to be within your radar range. You will radar it and you can counter them pretty nicely. On top of that, it also have access to burst fire mode as well, and it is definitely very strong AP once it's using the burst fire compared to normal AP on Edgar, because the main Patrie AP shell damage not only increased by 50%, okay, the AP shell armor penetration also increases by 100%, which is double, which basically means that you can actually citadel cruisers when they are broadside at 10 kilometers. Like for example, if there's Zhao, which doesn't get citadel by this AP penetration, usually on Minotaur. Now Edgar with the burst fire can actually do that, and it can shoot 3 salvos like Annapolis, which is pretty good. And that's why, in my opinion, with this absolutely everything that it has in the package, Edgar is a solid A tier. Not like the Annapolis and Conde. I mean, Annapolis and Conde have HE shells. Edgar doesn't have HE shells, and I think that's the only reason why I just slightly rate it less. But you can actually put it to S tier, and I don't mind. It's definitely that good. Because of the F button, you give F button to anything at Supership, it will get ridiculously strong. And that's the reason why I don't like Clausewitz, and there are a couple of other cruisers which I pretty much don't like because of that. So there's exactly that. So let's talk about the other ship, which is a Hannover, a German battleship, which is a Preußen successor. And in my opinion, well, Preußen is going to be a B+ tier. Unfortunately, it is strong, don't get me wrong, just like Devastation, but again, kind of having a similar issue like Devastation. Let me show you the Hannover real quick. So Hannover, at least compared to Preußen, has 483mm guns, which basically means that you can now overmatch battleships which having 32mm armor, which is a significant threshold. So anything that is bowing in, Hannover can shoot at its bow, which has 32mm armor plating, and you can actually get a lot of good penetration damage. For example, if this is a 32mm armor plating, you can just straight hit him from the bow, and it will just going to penetrate regardless of the angling. It will ignore the armor and it will just straight do penetration damage, which is pretty good. Your HP is really gigantic, 126k, which is crazy. Torpedo protection is definitely better, but it's better because of the captain build that I have, so keep that in mind. Anti-defense is slightly better than GK, but again, it's such a big ship that carriers will still love to strike you, and that's the reason why, even though it has better anti-defense, you can shoot on extra planes, but if carrier wants to hit you, it will hit you hard. You can't do much, to be honest, so unfortunately that's the case. Turning circle is huge, of like 1.2 kilometer. Like, it's gigantic. Turning circle in rudder shift is crazy. I mean, even though you have access to hydro like German, like Preußen, you will still going to have issues, dodging torpedoes. So unfortunately that's the case. But there's also one more problem that I really don't like on the Hannover, is that if I can show you something in the ship tool ST, this is Preußen and this is Hannover. So Hannover actually, if I can show you the main battery shells, Preußen AP DPM for some reason has less firepower compared to Preußen. Preußen has better APDPM than Hannover. Even the HEDPM is better in Preußen than Hannover. That is very unfortunate. Giving a slightly better caliber doesn't mean that it should have a bad APDPM, so you will not going to do a lot of damage, even though, because you are going to get a lot of overmatch, it's slightly going to have a lot much more effective damage compared to Preußen, but still kind of sucks, to be honest. So at least one thing that the Hannover does has is that it has access to this main battery, this F button, which actually increases the secondary battery firing range. It's not going to, buff the accuracy or anything on the guns. It is specifically related to secondary shells. Not only that, it buffs the range to around 14-ish kilometers, it also buffs the secondary battery reload time by minus 20%, which is crazy good, honestly. And if you like battleships that want to basically farm with secondaries, if you're able to survive, honestly, because pushing is not that easy in the game, I think Hannover is not bad, to be honest. But in my opinion, because it does not bring anything special except that funny button, which I believe, so Hannover is going to be a B+ tier strong ship, but again, not like Edgar, not like Annapolis, or maybe like Conde. It's not even close to that. So that's pretty much it. The next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Joshua Humphreys. A basic, it's a tier 11 gearing, or it's a successor to gearing, okay? So what Joshua Humphreys, which is an American destroyer, gives compared to gearing, does it have something special? But, well, first of all, if I rate the Joshua Humphreys, I would rate it to be B+ tier. So let me explain why. So if I can show you the Joshua Humphreys, where is that poor guy? Oh, there it is. Okay, so a destroyer, which actually now has access to F button, just like Annapolis and Conde, like Hannover, and it can shoot 3 salvos between short time. But the problem is that Joshua Humphreys having absolutely similar damage per minute compared to gearing. So it's not that much of an upgrade in terms of firepower, which is absolutely disappointing, honestly. It does have F button, sure it does have, but I will talk about the Yamagiri real quick, and that basically explains a whole lot that why I would rate Joshua Humphreys not that much. Does have decent hit pool points of 28,000, definitely better than gearing, but again, it doesn't have access to heal. It does, however, have American smokes, just like gearing. Torpedoes, just like gearing, probably have slightly better reload time. Torpedoes are similar to gearing, only having a burst fire, but it does have actually a really good anti-defense. I would rate it comparable to Holland now. A Holland is really, really strong in terms of anti-defense. Joshua Humphreys with a defensive AA, which by the way is a bit different because it has a continuous damage of 100% instead of 50. And once you pop that, you have a really good chance of shooting down planes. And I'm really saying that because it gets very much comparable to Holland levels of AA. It is really going to be that strong. Apart from that, Joshua Humphreys doesn't give anything else. It does have an F button. I can understand it basically makes it strong. But I mean, if you give cruiser the F button and if you give destroyer the F button, there's a huge difference. You can def strike cruisers with cruiser, okay? Like Annapolis can def strike a cruiser. Joshua Humphreys cannot def strike a destroyer, even though he can basically kill the wounded destroyer, but cannot shoot or kill down a full HP destroyer. So there's a difference in having funny button for the Joshua Humphreys and for the Annapolis. That's a big difference. So, I mean, it's basically more of a torpedo board than gun board. So, I mean, in my opinion, that's the exactly reason why I would rate this ship to be not really interesting, not really special, B+ tier. So, it's good, but it's not that, impressive compared to Annapolis. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Kunming, the Pan-Asian Yu-Yang supership. So it is a successor to Yu-Yang. And in my opinion, I would rate the Kunming to be probably A. Let me see the rating first because I have put the ratings out there. And I think we put the rating for the Kunming as I can show, oh, it's actually B plus. And now I remember that why I have put the rating on like Kunming. I mean, I have researched everything by the way, and that's why I have rated them accordingly. So it's not without research, and that's why I will put this to B plus tier. Sorry, I put that into A, and I will explain the reason why this Kunming is in a B plus tier. So let me show you in the port first. So Kunming is a Pan-Asian, obviously super ship, a destroyer. Now Kunming, again, doesn't have access to any sort of funny button, which is unfortunately sucks because, well, there are so many super ships that does have access to that. Kunming doesn't have it, even though Kunming does have torpedo reload booster that you will actually find on Yang. Speed boost you can find on Yang. Smokes find on Yang, radar as well. The damage per minute on the Kunming is also unimpressive, like it's slightly better than Yang, and that's the reason why it is kind of not impressive. Definitely better HP pool, but what actually does special? Like, you might be thinking, if Kunming is really bad, then where the Kunming really shines. So Kunming at least have one compensating factor, that it has, instead of 10 torpedoes on Yang, 15 torpedoes. So 50% damage output. It's not like 50% to be honest, because it is having a slightly worse reload time, but still these torpedoes does 18,800 damage, and they get spotted at 0.8 kilometer, which is basically point blank ranges, so you cannot dodge them because these are very, very fast torpedoes of 72 knots as well. So they become a absolutely crazy battleship killing machine. If there's a battleship and there's a Kunming, you're going to just eat battleships alive, because not only you have 15 torpedoes, you also have torpedo reload booster, so you will send 15 more torpedoes on water, and this won't be looking good for a battleship or even a cruiser, because if they don't have hydro, they will never going to dodge these torpedoes. They are undodgeable torpedoes, I would say. So, but the problem is that's the only compensating factor compared to Yang. It does not have any F button, so you have not that much offensive capabilities compared to Yang. And that's basically it. Its concealment is also worse than the Yang. It has 6 kilometer concealment. Like, if I can show you here real quick so that you get the idea. I didn't build it because I don't want to right now. So the detection is 6 kilometers. So it's actually not really that good. Even though they have buffed the concealment, it's still not good. So 6 kilometer concealment is not going to be basically making it a very stealthy destroyer. And that's the reason why all of these factors, anti-air is also pretty bad, to be honest. Super ship, bad anti-air, that is definitely not good. And that's the reason why I would rate it B plus. So Kunming, in my opinion, going to be straight up B plus. So yeah, not that really much worth it compared to Yang, but certainly an interesting destroyer because of 15 torpedoes. So now the next ship we going to talk about is going to be the Maine, the American Montana super ship, or you can call it the successor of Montana. So it does have 16 guns compared to Montana, and I will explain that what Maine really is. So where do I rate it? Well, Maine is going to be A tier, in my opinion. Really, really strong. Like, it is ridiculously strong. I mean, I can't say that it's going to be like S tier, but what I can really like say about the Maine is that it's having this A tier. So let me explain the reason why. So if I can go into the tech tree and go to the American line, give me a second. So unfortunately, Maine is in early access, so I don't have this ship right now, okay? But there's at least one thing that I want to talk about, because that's the reason. I mean, I have watched a lot of games, and what I felt that, I mean, you have 16 guns, just like the Devastation, it basically having the same resemblance, okay? But compared to Devastation, which is a HE, Conqueror, super ship, Maine have, again, slightly worse reload time compared to Montana, but at least what it does have, that it comes up with this F button, which is really good. Like, if you use this F button, once it gets activated, for 45 seconds, you will have like less fire damage, flooding damage, and you will also have buffed of continuous AA damage by 25%. Which basically means that you can literally tank fires and flood damage with this F button. which basically makes Maine probably the most tankiest battleship in the game ever. And I would say ever. It's ridiculously strong and tanky. It's not easy to kill that ship. I can tell you, if you give this thing on a Maine, it's not killable. And that's the reason why I really love the Maine, okay? So let me show you one more thing about the Maine real quick. So the Maine actually, as you can see here, it does have slightly better HEDPM and DPM compared to Montana, but unfortunately it does not have really good sigma value. As you can see, Montana has 1.9, Maine has 1.7. So even though you have 16 guns, 4x4, it still kind of have slightly wonky dispersion with 16 guns, which are still again 406 millimeter. So I would rate it to be A tier because it is ridiculously tanky ship. If you want to buy a battleship that is crazy tanky, I think Maine is definitely going to be your first choice. But again, it does not give any accuracy buff to battleship once you press the F button, which kinda does not make its offensive capabilities that good. But the defensive capabilities of Maine are way, way better. Like, they are really, really good. So that's the reason why I would rate the Maine at A tier. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Patrie, a French super battleship, which is a successor to Republic. So where do I rate that ship? So I would rate Patrie at probably A tier, I would say. I don't remember the rating that I give to Patrie after I have to check out. So Patrie basically rated as, just give me a second, where's the Patrie? Yeah, Patrie actually I rated it as A. Okay, yeah, I didn't expect that. So Patrie is A tier, and I now remember that why I would have rated and basically researched the Patrie, and obviously I also have experience. So let me show you the reason why I rate Patrie as A tier. So where's the Patrie? Give me a second. So there's the Patrie, and Patrie is a super battleship that has actually like big hull, like it is really big, way better HP pool, but the guns upgrade that Patrie has is actually pretty good. I mean, compared to Republic, which is tier 10, Patrie has 12 guns, which is actually pretty good. Like, it's straight up a extra turret buff. The reload time is still good of 30 seconds base, which is pretty nice, and you have a lot of HP pool of 108,000 compared to Republic, which is also a very nice buff. And not only that, it also have access to speed boost like Republic, also have really good heals. I mean, they are normal heals because, well, they are French battleship, they don't get any enhanced heals, but at least it does have very high HP, and that's the reason why, because of these 431mm guns, which can actually overmatch cruisers, like 30mm cruisers, so you can basically pen at any angle, Patrie becomes really, really strong. And the armor scheme of the Patrie is actually a bit special. I mean, it doesn't have any F button whatsoever, but I still really rate it A because, well, there's something about the Patrie that I don't understand. It has this armor, this side plating. You know, this side plating, whenever you shoot at this side plating, you mostly sometimes going to get some shells that will not going to do damage. Like, you shoot the AP shells, and the AP shell will do 0 damage. It has this insanely trollish armor. I don't know, but it seems to be the case. It does have a turtle back, which is actually very strong turtle back. I mean, I have never really able to citadel the Patrie at all whenever it's an enemy team. So very strong armor basically makes it pretty good, but still firepower is good. I mean, entire defense is also very, very decent, to be honest. I mean, it has probably a lot of, like, look at that flags, 12 flags coming out of this Patrie means that if there is an average CV player, he's going to take a lot of damage from those shell explosions, which is pretty good. So overall, I would say the Patrie, because of its weird tanking capability, even though it does have a vulnerable 32mm armor all over the place, still feels to be really strong. It does have 1.8 sigma, which basically having a very good improvement, sort of, compared to Republic. I mean, Republic has better accuracy, but at least you have a lot of guns, which compensates Patrie a lot. So I would rate it almost comparable to Maine, and that's the reason why I would rate it A tier. Okay, so the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Novosibirsk, a tier 11 Petropavlovsk. And Novosibirsk, I don't know how do I call it. In my opinion, this ship is going to be a B tier. Pretty disappointing ship compared to Petropavlovsk. Now, Petropavlovsk is really strong right now in the game. I think it's one of the most strongest cruisers in the game. But Novosibirsk actually doesn't come up with anything that can, make me proudly say that it is really strong, or at least even better than Petro, because it's not. It's unfortunately not. So let me explain this real quick. So Novosibirsk, I have this ship in my port. So unfortunately, compared to Petro, it does have like slightly better armor of 50mm. That's understandable good. Like it's actually good to see that. Petro has 40mm deck, it has 50mm. But again, the armor belt here is 35mm. Now this is kind of comparable to Riga's armor, and Riga is a tier 9, cruiser of that same line. I mean tier 9 Riga, and then we have tier 10 Petro. So I'm talking about the tier 9 Riga here, basically having this same sort of armor thickness. And the problem with this armor belt is that if you have Satsuma, you can actually overmatch this armor belt. So it's not tankier than Petro at all. And that kind of makes it suffer. Even though you have slightly better HP pool of 65,000, you have probably the most insane AP penetration in the game, which is kind of crazy. So let me show you the chart real quick here. As you can see, the Novosibirsk has 548mm penetration, and the Petropavlovsk, the tier 10 heavy cruiser, has 436. So now you can see how much of a difference the penetration of Novosibirsk has compared to Petro. And let me compare it to a battleship. This is Devastation with 541mm penetration. For example, this Novosibirsk has 254mm guns. Devastation has 419mm guns. Novosibirsk has more penetration than a Devastation. That is insane. So you basically even penetrate battleships at ranges. So Novosibirsk can actually do that. I mean, Petro is already pretty good in that. Novosibirsk actually will able to do that even at more longer ranges, which kind of makes it crazy, to be honest. But I think that's the only compensating factor that it has compared to Petropavlovsk. Honestly, in terms of the armor scheme, it's kind of disappointing, to be honest, because, well, this Novosibirsk armor 35mm can actually farmed by IFHE, destroyers that have 30mm armor. Like if there is a booster that has 30mm armor penetration, if it uses IFHE, it will actually going to pen this armor belt. So Novosibirsk compared to Petro actually feels like having a weak armor. Very thick superstructure as well, so it does not really compensate compared to Petro that much. Anti-defense is also kind of a letdown, a slightly worse anti-defense. And even the rudder turning circle and rudder shift is also kind of in a bad spot. And that's basically the reason why I would rate Novosibirsk not that interesting. It does have a really interesting AP penetration, which basically makes it very easy that you can actually citadel battleships at long ranges. But that's basically about it. It doesn't have any F button. Like, it doesn't have anything that is really interesting compared to Petropavlovsk. Petropavlovsk, in my opinion, is a better super ship compared to Novosibirsk. But that's what I actually felt when I played Novosibirsk. So in my opinion, Novosibirsk is going to be a, well, B tier, kind of very disappointing. So there's exactly that. So the next ship is gonna be a Satsuma, a tier 11 Yamato, or a super Yamato, I would say. It's a successor to Yamato class battleship, and Satsuma, in my opinion, is going to be S tier. Straight up brokenly overpowered. It's crazy. I will explain the reason why. So I have Satsuma. It's a Japanese super battleship. Now, a couple of things. It does have 510mm guns compared to 460mm guns. A lot better alpha damage of 19,400. Even though the damage per minute of Satsuma is almost similar to Yamato, which I will explain real quick. Let me show you that. I don't know if I open, no, I don't have this right now. I have to go and check out the Yamato and Satsuma. So let me show you the damage per minute of the Yamato and Satsuma. So you can see the AP DPM of Satsuma and the Yamato is actually almost the same. Pretty much similar. HE DPM of Yamato is actually slightly better than Satsuma, but at least one thing that Satsuma does have is that it has better penetration at long ranges. Let me show you that. Satsuma at long ranges, which I can show you real quick. As you can see, Satsuma does retain a lot much more penetration at long ranges compared to Yamato, which is pretty good. It does have slightly better overmatch, and I was talking about the Novosibirsk. Well, Satsuma can overmatch 35mm armor, which is kind of good. As you can see, 35mm overmatch, so you can actually overmatch this battleship Novosibirsk. So this is actually a pretty interesting feature on Satsuma. But what makes it Satsuma really interesting, apart from its HP, which is gigantic, the armor is also very tanky, to be honest. Like, look at that, 57mm, 45mm. Like, this whole armor scheme is very good to tank a lot of shells. Superstructure is also relatively small, to be honest. So all things combined, with this really thick armor belt of 460mm compared to Yamato's, actually, I don't remember, 420 or something. Satsuma is definitely a really big upgrade. Even the torpedo belt is a lot better, like 59%. Even the firing range is better as well. So, but the thing that makes Satsuma insane, and probably the most broken ship in the game, is that F button. So if you're able to basically have this F button ready, you are going to get 35% main battery shell dispersion buff. Go and check out countless videos. Once you press the F button, your dispersion is so insane, you can dev strike a battleship with full HP. It is ridiculously that strong. You can even blap cruisers, but you can now blap battleships at long ranges. If any battleship gets spotted at 15 km and turns out, and if you shoot these guns perfectly, you are going to get 3-4 citadels, and you're going to get dev strike. It is crazy strong, honestly. Its anti-defense is nothing really special. I mean, this whole Yamato line is pretty bad in anti-defense, but Satsuma is slightly better, so a bit more plain shot down, but still it doesn't really going to make up for it. But you can actually compensate this with fighter consumable, but it's totally up to you. But I basically talked about the F button, and in my opinion, just because of this F button, and with a really good HP pool of like almost 120k and torpedo protection like crazy, I rate Satsuma to be a really strong S tier battleship. Perfect for sniping possibly everything in the game, and that's the reason why I would rate it S tier. So the next ship is going to be Piemonte, Italian Venezia upgrade, or you can call it a Super Venezia at tier 11 or super tier. So in my opinion, this ship Piemonte is going to be a tier. Very strong, solid ship. I really love it. It's a really good blend of Napoli and Venezia, and I will explain the reason why. So let me show you the Piemonte. Italian cruiser. Yeah, it's a Venezia, but tier 11. But it does have 254mm guns. Now it does have 12 guns, but it's less guns than Venezia, but it has 254mm caliber, which means that it has a lot much more alpha damage on SAP. And SAP has slightly better armor penetration capacity as well, so it is really good against even the Kremlin, which is pretty good. I mean, Venezia have 54mm armor penetration capacity, which basically means that a lot of shells will not going to penetrate on the deck of the, the Kremlin, but Piemonte does that. And you also have like access to these guns, 254mm gun that can overmatch cruisers, by the way, which is very nice. I mean, overmatching cruiser, which is 16mm, means that at any angle, the Edgar, the Minotaur, all these light cruisers like Colbert, Smolensk, they are going to take massive damage from Piemonte. And Piemonte, with this amount of sap damage, you can actually get 16,000 damage each volley, which makes Piemonte really strong. But this is only the offensive capabilities that I talked about. Even though it does not have F button, Well, by the way, it does have submarine surveillance, just like Venezia, so you can counter submarines, which is very nice. I mean, SAP already dev strike destroyers, and submarines, so submarine surveillance means that, well, someone's going to have a huge issue once it gets spotted. So yeah, there's exactly that. But it does have exhaust smoke generator, but let me show you something which makes Piemonte ridiculously strong. And that's the reason why I rate it 8 here. Armor scheme, 40 millimeter, 40 millimeter. This armor basically makes Piemonte very tanky against every battleship caliber in the game. If you are angled like this, the battleship shell will only bounce. It will not penetrate, it will not overmatch. It's a huge buff compared to Venezia. You can tank battleships like shells on a cruiser like Piemonte, it becomes absurd. And with the sap damage that you can pump out on a broadside battleship like 19,000, yeah, Piemonte becomes a monster. And its armor is very tanky, its citadel armor is also very trollish and tanky at the same time. And you will have a bit more difficult time citadeling Piemonte than Venezia as well. So this whole package with also have torpedoes, by the way, and you have not that much impressive anti-defense. I mean, anti-defense, I won't say that is going to be that good, but still, overall, Piemonte is really strong. Like, the only problem with the Piemonte that I felt is that it does not have access to spotter plane or fighter consumable, which is a huge letdown, and that's probably the reason why I didn't give him S tier, because, well, you are kind of limited with your range of 17.8 kilometers only. So you can smoke up and, try to basically disengage from these smokes, but once you have those spotter plane, you can have extra range on Venezia. It feels good, but it's not the case on Piemonte. And this whole thing and package combined basically makes Piemonte a huge powerhouse. So in my opinion, Piemonte is going to be a tier, very, very strong. Not strong like Annapolis because it does not have F button at all. So yeah, kind of disappointing at least in that regard. But hey, I don't mind this at all, at least in this A tier. So the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Sekiryu, a Japanese super carrier. And in my opinion, it will go again to A tier. It is ridiculously strong. Honestly, yikes, it's very, very strong. Honestly, I can't even emphasize that how much ridiculously broken this ship currently is in the game. And it's basically the same bullshit sort of approach like Eagle. And let me explain why. So Sekiryu, ridiculously good armor. Look at that, 95mm deck, just like Hakiryu, but slightly worse armor on the bow and like on the stern. But still, it's 40mm, which means that you are not going to get overmatch. Amazing armor still, regardless, at this tier. Very nice. HP pool is also increased to 71,000, which is nice. But there's something that I want to talk about, which is, let me show you. So Sekiryu actually have the similar arm, give me a second. So as you can see here, you have similar attacks that you do on Hakiryu, attack HE rockets, torpedo bombers, same, which are absolutely amazing on Hakiryu. Like Hakiryu is already a very, very strong carrier in the game, and you have same armaments like you get on Hakiryu, you also have that on Sekiryu, but now you have access to, again, those jet tactical squadrons. Oh my goodness. And they do pretty insanely good damage, like 7,500 damage on 4 of the torpedoes. You send 4 torpedoes on a single target. Well, you can definitely going to smash them for 24,000 damage. And then you also have rockets which have 30mm armor pen, like these rockets, so you can smash cruisers. So yeah, 300 knots plus speed. Yeah, it's not going to be easy for any ship to deal with this carrier. And yeah, this is basically the whole package that I really love about the Sekiryu. Secondaries is nothing to brag about. It does, however, have Argumo secondaries, by the way. Like, it has tons of secondaries, to be honest. So I mean, if it started to use a lot of secondaries after the CV rework that Wargaming has announced, well, Sekiryu is going to be pretty interesting, that's for sure. Anti-defense is very good. Maneuverability and concealment is not really special at all, so I'm not going to talk about that. But honestly, this whole package that it has, Sekiryu, easiest here. I don't even want to say. If you love Hakiryu, Sekiryu is a better Hakiryu. So absolutely worth it. very strong S tier super carrier in my opinion. Okay, so the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be Admiral Ushakov, a Russian tier 11 Kremlin, or a successor to Kremlin. So where do I rate this one? Well, Ushakov in my opinion goes to A tier. Now Ushakov actually have the same powerful thing which I really like about Satsuma, and let me show you the Ushakov real quick. So Ushakov actually have the highest HP pool in the entire game of 135,000, even though the torpedo belt is slightly worse than Kremlin. But I mean, this is something that I don't like. I mean, it does have similar caliber guns, similar reload time, which I felt that it kind of fell short in that regard. I mean, in terms of firepower capability, Ushakov is not that of a big deal compared to Kremlin, except for its tankiness and armor, which I will explain right now a bit more. So let me show you the armor scheme real quick. So this is super long and big Ushakov. 60mm deck armor means that a lot of HE shells will going to shatter. And let me show you something which basically makes Ushakov insane. Like, it basically gets ridiculously insane. And look at that torpedo bulkhead, citadel armor. And look at that armor, that layout that it has. This is 450mm armor thickness. So as you can see here, as I am previously telling you, that this armor is so thick that any battleship that shoots at this armor probably not going to citadel him, even though there is a citadel that exists in Ushakov, but it is so thickly armored that it kind of does not exist. I mean, you will going to have so hard time citadeling Ushakov compared to Kremlin that it's not even funny. And this armor scheme combined with this whole tanky deck armor, and one more thing, even though offensive point of view the guns are absolutely unimpressive, they are really not good in any way, but what makes Ushakov again something that basically makes anything overpowered is that you get a F button. And this F button, just like Satsuma, gives a immediate like main Patrie shell dispersion buff of 30%. So if you use the F button, your dispersion is going to be so pinpoint accurate that you're going to get dev strike on cruisers, on battleships regardless. So again, if you use this, well, you know that it becomes better Kremlin for sure. So in my opinion, that's exactly the reason, because of this highest HP pool, insanely good tanky armor, even though it does have a gigantic superstructure, but still it is not easy to farm it because very tanky regardless. Very good anti defense as well. So every single thing combined, Ushakov becomes a really strong ship that is not easy to kill, like the Maine. Maine has a different tankiness, Ushakov has a different tankiness, but both are ridiculously tanky, and having this access to F button means that obviously you're going to smash cruisers and battleships here and there once you use the F button properly, and that's the reason why I put Ushakov in an A tier, very strong, but it's not like the Annapolis and Conde, or maybe even Satsuma. So there's exactly that. Okay, now we will come up to a destroyer, which is a Shimakaze, upgrade, which I would like, let me show you here real quick. This is Yamagiri, by the way. So Yamagiri actually going to be in A tier, in my opinion. So Yamagiri feels to be really better Shimakaze. So let me explain why. Here is the Yamagiri in my port. So what Yamagiri brings? So Yamagiri actually have again 6 guns compared to Shimakaze, but its HE DPM, which I will show you, is a massive improvement. And if I can show you the chart, which can actually explain the reason why I won't rate, the other destroyers like Dalarna, Holland, the other ships that good compared to Shimakaze Yamagiri upgrade. So if I can show you the Shimakaze, the main battery, Shimakaze has 134 kh DPM, which is pretty abysmal, but Yamagiri has now a lot better HE which basically means that you can actually fight back destroyers a lot much more comfortably compared to Shimakaze. And not only that, Yamagiri again retains the same concealment of 5.6 kilometer, which I can show you here real quick. So you can see here 5.6 kilometer concealment. Dalarna has 6.1, Kunming has, I think, 6 kilometer, and Yamagiri still have really stealthy concealment. And on top of that, it does have also access to burst fire mode. So you can shoot 3 salvos within 3 seconds, which basically means you can actually kill a destroyer with Yamagiri. These guns have really good HE alpha, like 2150, which is pretty much, that we have on Shimakaze. But this whole thing with the F button, with the better damage per minute, means Shimakaze actually able to fight against destroyers very comfortably, relatively very comfortably compared to Shimakaze. And on top of that, you also have extra torpedoes. So instead of 15 torpedoes, now you not only have 18 torpedoes, but like that having 12 kilometer, you also have a weird alternative torpedo which is 20 kilometer. Now, I mean, I know that you won't be using 20 kilometers a whole lot, but there's one use that will make you pretty happy. If you see a carrier that is like 20 kilometer away broadsiding, you just send the torpedoes and they will eventually going to land on that target, which actually gives him like a bit of a value, at least compared to other destroyers. So alternative torpedoes are pretty interestingly sometimes useful. But again, 18 torpedoes are pretty good. So you have alternative torpedo like the Dalarna, but 20 kilometer having very bad concealment. But again, just like I said, you throw them on carriers or something that you know or you are expecting, to hit the target. And you have 18 torpedoes with having really, really good reload time of 118 seconds. If I can build and show you real quick, so you can see the torpedo reload time is basically 100 and, let me show you here real quick. No, what is that? But it gets to around 118 seconds with this build. So Yamagiri gets pretty strong in my opinion. The speed is pretty good at 40 knots. And if you use the speed boost, again, just like Shimakaze, really good speed as well. Concealment is also good. So it's basically a Yamagiri, or I would say Shimakaze, but way better Shimakaze. I mean, in terms of entire defense, it's not going to do anything good against carriers. But again, this is the whole problem with this whole line. So you cannot complain at least on that. But other than that, it is absolutely amazing against destroyers now, at least compared to Shimakaze. Good against cruisers as well as battleships. So you have a very good chance in winning games if you play Yamagiri. So in my opinion, really strong A-tier destroyer. At least compared to Kunming, at least compared to the Dalarna, it's definitely a lot better. Let's talk about the United States, which is the only carrier that is in the game. I mean, not only carrier, it's just that it's the only carrier remaining right now in our tier list, and that will go straight to the B+ tier. So United States is actually kind of a letdown compared to Sekiryu and Eagle in my personal opinion. And the reason why United States is exactly that is, let me show you something here. So United States actually have gotten nerfed a bit more harsher than anything else in the game. For example, it does have access to tactical squadrons, just like all the other carriers. Very good damage on bombs, by the way. Bombs have never gotten nerfed. They are still ridiculously powerful, but they have very high aircraft preparation time, so it will take a lot of time, by the way. And then you also have HE rockets, which are very strong, by the way, as well. But the key thing about the United States, and the most powerful thing that makes the United States to be really strong, is the torpedo bombers. But unfortunately, now these torpedo bombers only have 6,133 damage, which is actually similar to that of Nakhimov strike, levels of power. So its offensive capability have gotten nerfed recently, and it used to be sort of S tier. When it got released, it used to be ridiculously broken ship. Now it's actually not the case. The another problem of the United States is this armor. Eagle and Sekiryu has way better armor compared to United States, and this 38mm armor and this big ship that you can see, like it is having a big gigantic hull, basically means that. And on top of that, there's also one more thing that makes it very vulnerable. Let me show one more thing real quick. So as you can see, this citadel deck armor, 19mm. So if any shell, for example, bypasses this armor thickness, I mean, if it does not hit here, okay, it will hit. If it hit, sorry, what am I saying? Sorry guys, my English can sometimes suck, but bear that with me. But if any shell hit here, it will straight up going to do a massive damage, and the Citadel also going to get overmatched. So keep that in mind, and because of exactly that, this armor profile is pretty vulnerable. I mean, I usually get Citadel at long ranges by a battleship that shoots like here. If the shell doesn't hit, if it hits here, it will absolutely going to get me smashed. Armor is pretty poor. Concealment is also very poor, means that it is not easy to be in the United States in terms of its positioning. So in that regard, the United States is definitely a lot more like weaker. Even though there's only one thing about the United States that is good, that it still retains these HE attack aircraft and bombers on the midway. Like, I mean these bombers and the HE rockets are extremely powerful against destroyers, but you get that similarly on midway, right? So, I mean, that's the reason why I totally believe with this torpedo bombers nerf, and also by the way, they also have really bad aircraft preparation time, and it used to be really, really high, like better, I would say, but now it's not exactly the case. And this weak armor, and combined with the fact that it does not have anything else going for it apart from its ridiculously strong AA defense, which is without a doubt better than Sekiryu and the Eagle, United States even doesn't come to me as a tier A carrier as well. In my opinion, it is very strong still, but still I would rate it as B plus tier. So strong, but not that strong compared to Eagle and Sekiryu. They are pretty much more superior ships and a good pick compared to the United States. Okay, so the next ship that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Zorkiy. It's a super, ship, an upgrade compared to Delhi. And in my opinion, I would rate Zorkiy to be a strong B plus ship. Even though I'm not a fan of Zorkiy at all, compared to the Yamagiri, which is really better, it's still kind of having the same resemblance in terms of offensive and defensive capability compared to, for example, the Kunming and the Dalarna, in a unique way, which I will explain why. So there is Zorkiy here. So what Zorkiy as a Russian destroyer comes up with? So first of all, it does have really good HP pool of 23,600, which is nice. It does have better HDPM compared to Delhi, which is a tier 10 destroyer, and I mean it has 8 guns, and these 8 guns having decent DPM, very good shell velocity on these guns, and also it does have 10-kilometer torpedoes, which are actually really, really usable. Like 10-kilometer torpedoes are super good that Zorkiy has, 5 of them. I mean, the torpedo damage isn't going to be that impressive, but still they are finally going to be usable. If I'm not wrong, the tier 10 Delhi has 8-kilometer torpedoes, which are a bit difficult to use, but they can be used. I'm not sure about that number, so yeah, bear with me, and please apologize if I have just misguided in this regard, like in terms of the torpedo range. But well, it does have 10-kilometer torpedoes, which is pretty nice. It does not have any strong anti-defense, just like a lot of other destroyers except Dalarna. And the thing about the Zorkiy is that it again has access to F button, which actually is pretty good, just like the Yamagiri, just like the Joshua Humphreys. But again, it's like a destroyer which having a lot of good speed. Like, let me show you the speed. It have access to the speed boost. It has a lot of base speed of 43 knots, so you can basically go around 46, 47 knots, and you basically farm battleships at cruiser at long ranges. And that's exactly why you should play Zorkiy if you like to farm battleships and cruisers. It's not really interesting in terms of torpedo, and the gunpowder is kind of also not that like overwhelmingly good. So that's purely because of that. I wouldn't rate a Zorkiy to be that good. In defensive point of view, however, Zorkiy is actually a bit interesting. Let me show you here. Like, Zorkiy actually has armor which is 50mm side thickness. So I mean, if you want to shatter HE shells, Zorkiy is actually going to be very effective compared to any other destroyer at this tier. So Yamagiri doesn't have this, the Joshua Humphreys doesn't have this, not even the Dalarna or Kunming has it, but this does have access to this sort of armor scheme. 25mm. It's basically like a Khabarovsk and Delhi combined together in terms of armor scheme, and you basically get Zorkiy. But again, the firepower isn't going to be like like smashing or basically overpowered or anything. And that's purely because of these reasons. Even though you are really painful to deal with, like you cannot kill Zorkiy that easily at all, because it's a really good speed monster that just move around here and there, and you can just not able to get good salvos on Zorkiy because of the speed. And that's exactly the reason why I would rate Zorkiy to be strong, but unfortunately not really going to be that special. I mean, if you want to play Yamagiri with a better torpedo boat and gunpowder, Yamagiri does a lot better, I would say, compared to Zorkiy. But Zorkiy does have its own speciality like speed, extra speed, etc. So yeah, this is my tier list, and let's come up to the conclusion. And honestly, all of the ships are really good, but if you want to buy a super ship that is really worth it for your credits, I think these 5 super ships, in my opinion, are worth a lot much more. And I mean, if you love cruisers, Annapolis and Conde are my first pick. Buy them first. They are really strong. It's absolutely worth it to buy them. If you like carriers, then Eagle and Sekiryu are probably should be your first picks. And if you like sniping battleship, like the most insane sniper in the game, Satsuma is amazingly good. Then, if you like a Minotaur gameplay with smoke or radar, I think Edgar is definitely way better compared to Minotaur, especially because of these torpedoes as well. It's a really good pick. Maine is also really strong with its 16 guns, and it is not easy to kill this ship, man. It's super hard once it uses F button. It is crazy good. Patrie, 12 guns, 431mm, they are very scary. Honestly, if anything, like cruiser show broadside on Patrie, oof, it's gonna be like easy depth strike. Oh my goodness. I can't even emphasize more like that. Piemonte, really good blend of Venezia and Napoli. Tankiness of Napoli and the sap shells of Venezia, but slightly, tuned up a bit more, means that Piemonte is also not easy to kill and also powerful like Venezia. Great, powerful ship. Ushakov, F button again, dispersion improvement means that you're basically going to screw any cruiser that show broadside. Battleships that show broadside, so Ushakov, super tanky battleship, unable to do Citadel at even close ranges if you are angled, makes Ushakov insane. Yamagiri is a straight up better Shimakaze. No question asked. If you love torpedo boat, Yamagiri should be your first pick compared to any other destroyer right now. I would say Yamagiri is a way better option. Clausewitz, disappointing. I think Hindenburg should be played up a lot much more, in my opinion, compared to Clausewitz. It does not bring anything special. I don't like Clausewitz much. I think it's not bad, but it's not good either, at least compared to Hindenburg. And Hindenburg already feels a lot much more special compared to Clausewitz. So yeah, it's good, but it's not really good, at least comparably to Hindenburg. Then we have this ship, Dalarna. I mean, if you don't like carriers, okay, use this ship and you will just farm a lot of planes. Honestly, you will just do so much damage to the planes that it will calm your heart down and it will cure your ailment, that's for sure. Then you have Devastation. Devastation can just farm a lot of fire damage for sure, but again, a bit worse dispersion and then higher reload time. Not having a lot much more DPM compared to Conqueror means it's kind of a mixed bag. Even though you are a lot much more tankier like Maine and this ship, but it does not bring anything special, so that's the reason why I don't really like Devastation. Still strong, but not like crazy strong, like for example the Satsuma, which can basically depth strike in just a single salvo every ship in the game. Like literally, it's that strong. Hannover is a secondary monster sort of thing. If you like secondary battleships, you should give a try. Hannover is interesting, but again, 14-kilometer range. If you want to shoot battleship at long ranges, sure, you can do that. And it does have also access to overmatch, so keep that in mind. Like you can basically lol pen battleships regardless of their armor, if they have 32mm, by the way, so that's actually pretty good on that ship as well. Then we have this ship, which is Kunming. Kunming is okay. I mean, a lot of torpedoes, and they are undodgeable torpedoes. And if you like Shimakaze, then you love 15 torpedo, torpedo boat. But again, not really interesting gunpowder, kind of makes it not really good for me. Better than Yamagiri? I don't think so. It's worse than Yamagiri, in my opinion. Joshua Humphreys, again, worse than Yamagiri. I mean, you don't have any access to better DPM, so it's kind of having a worse DPM. So, I mean, F button again, sure it does have, but still it having those limited engagements. You can just farm destroyers with that F button much. So, I mean, still doesn't have anything special with torpedoes at all. Kind of sucks, except anti-air defense. Only the anti-air defense is the compensating factor compared to gearing. United States, again, weak armor, having nerf torpedoes. It is still strong as a carrier, by the way. I mean, it's not really bad. But if you compare it to Sekiryu and Eagle, it's now felt to be definitely a lot short. So that's the reason why United States is like strong B+, and that's why I don't rate it like that high compared to Eagle and Sekiryu. So there's exactly that. Zorkiy, very fast ship, and you basically going to annoy the hell out of enemy team. It's gonna be really tough to kill Zorkiy for sure. You're gonna be pain to deal with, that's for sure. And other than that, I mean, you are only a damage farmer. Your impact is not gonna be that much high compared to Yamagiri. Yamagiri going to have definitely a lot better impact. That's my personal opinion. But Zorkiy can definitely farm ship, but still, nothing too special regardless. Novosibirsk is very, I mean, there's a Patrie which feels like a super ship compared to Novosibirsk. Except the most bunker penetration for a cruiser in the game, I mean, it has better penetration than Devastation or Conqueror. It doesn't have anything else special. Armor is worse, the entire defense is worse. A lot of things compared to Petropavlovsk is worse, except for the guns that have a bit of overmatching capability, and that's basically about it. Slightly better DPM, but again, no way. It's the most disappointing cruiser. It does not have access to F button as well, so very disappointing. But I would say that you don't buy if you have Patrie. Honestly, you just don't buy it. So this is the whole summary that I want to give. And well, if you like this video, please definitely comment, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, please. I have really taken a lot of time. I have researched so much to basically make this amazing tier list for you. And any support, if you give me now, will help me a lot later. So if you can do that, definitely will help me a lot. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you like this amazing tier list of super ships. And if you do like it, obviously you know what to do. I have told it multiple times. So I will catch you guys later. And thank you very much for watching this video. Again, thank you.